I started the Four Winds in a place where I was actually really quite depressed with my life, in a time where things weren't moving. I was really stuck. And as I started the South, and as I started into the medicine wheel, I found myself in a place that became inspiring, and it was really a way that I found out who I really was. When I was a kid, a little kid, I used to pretend like I was a medicine woman, and I would get herbs together and try and save little animals that had died and that my cat had killed. I lived in Alaska, and there were a lot of Native Americans around, so I don't know exactly what inspired me or if I came in from this world just with that information already, but I had this sense of being a medicine woman at a very young age. And then in my teens, my late teens, I experimented around with a lot of mind-altering substances and found a really spiritual place with that, and found this sense of guidance that I had and solidity that I had. And I became very interested in what that interface between energy and matter was. And I wanted to understand what it was. But by the time I got to college, there wasn't any way to explore that. There weren't any classes on being a medicine woman. There wasn't any formal training. So I chose to study physics. And because particle physics seemed like the closest thing to that energy-matter interface. So I studied physics and got a lot out of it. I did my thesis on non-locality. But when it came to working in the world, again, I felt lost because this was in the 80s, I really wasn't interested in building bombs. And it was when all the Star Wars defense stuff was going on. So I didn't really know what to do. I stalled by going to graduate school and working on a PhD in neuroscience. And then what happened is my mother died, and I had this experience where I went with her as she crossed over, and I got to a certain place where she could go and I couldn't go anymore. And there was this voice that said, you have to stay here, you're not done yet. And my whole life just spiraled into a whole nother direction, and I ended up apprenticing with my yoga teacher, getting a yoga studio of my own, and then that's about where I was when I met Alberto. And I had stalled again, and I still hadn't gotten to that place where I was able to get rid of depression from my old age, from my childhood, or to know who I really was. I had this duality going on with the science and the spiritual work, and somehow I wasn't able to bring those two worlds together. And then I went to a conference and I met Alberto, and he was talking about how the shamans work with energy and they go between the worlds, and that it's actually quantum physics. And I just realized this was it. This was somebody that was going to teach me a lot. And I joined up with the South Direction 2 weeks later, and it was just a metamorphosis. I just completely remembered who I am. And all the things that I thought made me odd and not fit in as a scientist, in a sense, were validated because the science was really structuring me and putting me in a box. And once I got into this program, I realized that the science was more of a metaphor and a way of thinking of things, and I was grateful for having trained my brain that way, but I was also realizing that I had this whole other side that I can download information from and then use my wisdom and my strength and my intelligence to direct it. And so it kind of brought me together, my two worlds together, and it completely changed my life. And now I have a healing center, and I do work with people. I teach for the Four Winds, and I feel like I am who I came here to be, and I never would have found that without that.